in regard with whether there's going to be any shinui v'chidush in minhagei shalaylam when Mashiach comes, the Rambam seems to have a very interesting shita. For the Rambam says in Perek Yud Beis Halacha Aleph that al yala ala leiv, a person should not think that when Mashiach comes there's going to be any shinui v'chidush olam kiminhagei noyig. And then the Rambam asks, and this that it says in the Navi in Yeshaya that v'gar zevim keves and so on, answers the Rambam that that's only a mashal. It's only a mashal for how the nations of the world will be la'asid lavei, but really olam kiminhagei noyig. There's the famous kasha on this Rambam from the Teiras Koyanim in Parshas Bechukaisai, Perikov Vav, Pasuk Dalit, and Al Derech Zeh in the end of Masechta Ksuvos, that it says clearly that la'asid lavai ve'etz asada yitein perioi la'asid lavai the ilonei sirak, trees that usually don't give fruit will begin to bear fruit when Mashiach comes. It says a sign in the Teiras Koyanim and in Ksuvos. At the end of Ksuvos, Amar Rav Chia bar Ashi Amar Rav, Asidin kol ilonei sirak shebe'eretz Yisrael sheyitenu peiros, and he brings a pasuk. So how could the Rambam say that it's going to be Olam Kimin Hagei Noyeg if we see a clear memra in Chazal that there is going to be a Chidush V'Shinui that Ilonei Sirak are going to have peiros? One possible answer that could be given is that the Rambam will learn Pshat in this Maimer Chazal that it's also a mashal. For example, that the Ilonei Sirak is a mashal for Amei HaAretz, and when Mashiach comes, they're going to become Talmidei Chachamim also. But this is very schwer to learn Pshat like this, because Sai in the Teiras Koyanim and in the Gemara in Ksuvos, all the memris over there, it's mashma that everything's going to be begashmius like that. Begashmius, there's going to be peiros on the Ilonei Sirak and so on. So it's hard to learn Pshat that the Rambam saying that it's a mashal. Another kasha on the Rambam is the kasha that the Ravid asks. The Ravid asks on the Rambam, say over here in Hilchos Melachim and also in Hilchos Tshuva Perek Ches, that it says in the pasuk v'hishbati chayera min haaretz. If there's not going to be any more chayera, if there's not going to be any more chayos teirfos, that is a shini v'chidush min hagei shalaylam. So how could the Rambam say that there's not going to be any shini v'chidush that olam kimin hagei noyeg? So the Radvaz al Asar answers this kasha of the Ravid, and he's mechalik. He says in Eretz Yisrael there's going to be a chiddush. This pasuk of V'hishpati chayera min haaretz is referring to Eretz Yisrael, and over there taka there's going to be shinu min hagei shalaylam. Mashenkin in chutz la'aretz there it's going to be olam kimin hagei noyeg, and that's what the Rambam was referring to. But this Pshat is also not so glatik in the Rambam, because the Rambam himself is not mechalik between Eretz Yisrael and Chutz La'aretz. He says Olam Kimin Hagei Noyeg, and it's mashma. Sai in Eretz Yisrael, Sai in Chutz La'aretz is going to be Olam Kimin Hagei Noyeg. Another Pshat which it's possible perhaps to say is a Pshat which it says in the Sefer Avodas HaKodesh in Chelik Beis Perek Lamed Ches, where he explains what does Olam Kimin Hagei Noyeg mean. And he says as follows: Olam Kimin Hagei Noyeg means that there will be Dvarim Nifloim which are happening. How does that fit in with Olam Kimin Hagei Noyeg? So he explains, the Avodas HaKodesh explains that the reason is because Olam Kimin Hagei Noyeg means going back to the way the world was on the first day of Ma'aseh Bereishis, which in the first day of Ma'aseh Bereishis we know that the peiros, the eights, the trees were able to give peiros in one day. So therefore, it's the teva ha'olam is going to go back to the way it was noyeg in tchilas brias ha'olam, and that's the pshat olam kimin hagei noyeg. So according to this, the Rambam could work out very good, especially according to the Ramban, that the Ramban says in his Dirshas Teiras Hashem Temima, he says also benegiyah to other areas of how the world was, that there were no chayes teirfos when the world was first created, and the Ilonei Sirak also gave peiros in the beginning of Bria. So Eibazoi Olam Kimin Hagei Noyeg could be a very beautiful pshat according to the Rambam, that the Rambam says that Olam Kimin Hagei Noeg, but it means that there's still going to be amazing things happening. And it's going to be big Oisei Sumayvsin. Elamai, Olam Kimin Hagei Noeg means it's going to be the way it was Betchilas Habriya. So Eibazai, it's not a kasha on the Rambam from the Gemara in Ksuvis and from the Teres Kainim and from the Ravid where he brings the pasuk of Eshpati Chayera Min Haaretz. However, this pshat is also shver to say in the Rambam for several reasons, but the simplest reason is when the Rambam says Olam Kimin Hagei Noeg, the pashtus what he means is the way how the world was noyeg for the last several thousand years. He's not referring to a certain minig of the world which was at a certain point in history, for a limited time in history. The pashtus means the Olam, the way it's noyeg from right after the Chet Tzadas until now. That's how the world will be noyeg also in Times of Moshiach, when Mashiach comes. So Eibazoi, Frexich the Shaila, we're back to the Shailas on the Rambam, that how is it possible to say that Olam Kimin Hagei Noeg in a regular way if we have all these Maimorei Chazal based on Psukim that there's going to be a major Shini V'Chidush in Minhagei Shel Olam. Two more Shailas, which are Shailas from the Lechem Mishnah on the Rambam, but are starke Shailas as well, is that the Pashtus, when the Rambam says that Olam Kimin Hagei Noeg, the Pashtus he's paskening like Shmuel in the Gemara, in Brachas Daf Lamed Daled Amud Beis, where the Gemara says over there that Ein Bein HaOlam Hazeh L'Yomos HaMashiach Elo Shibud Malchis Bilvad. The only difference is Shibud Malchis. That's the only difference between Olam Hazeh to Yomos HaMashiach. It means when Mashiach comes, everything's going to be the same. Elamai Yidden are not going to be Meshubah to Malchis of the Umos Olam, and we're going to be able to serve the Eibishter with peace of mind and Menuchas HaNefesh. The Lechem Mishnah has two shaylos on this, because there's two places in Rambam where he paskins neged against this psak of Shmuel. One place is in Hilchos Tshuva, Perek Ches, Halacha Zayin, where the Rambam Beferish brings the other shita in the Gemara, which the other shita in the Gemara is the shita of Rabbi Yechanan, which says, the Gemara says, Amar Rab Chia Barabba Ab Rabbi Yechanan, Kol HaNeviim Kulam Le'nisnabu Ela L'Yomos HaMashiach, Aval Olam Haba Ayin Le'ras Alekim Zulasecha. We see that L'Yomos HaMashiach, the Neviim said their nevuos for Yomos HaMashiach. And the Rambam says this in Hilchos Tshuva, Perek Ches Halacha Zayin. So that's Shaila number one. Shaila number two is Beneged another nevuah that in Hilchos Shabbos, the Rambam in Hilchos Shabbos, it's mashma, he paskins like the Chachamim in the Gemara in Shabbos, Daf Samach Gimel Amud Aleph. The Mishnah over there has a machlokes whether a man is allowed to walk around with a sword on Shabbos. The Chachamim say that he's not allowed to walk around with a sword, and Rabbi Eliezer says that it's a tachshit, a sword is a tachshit. And why do the Chachamim argue on Rabbi Eliezer? Why do they say a man's not allowed to walk around with a sword? They say a sword is not a tachshit, because the Navi says that in Yomos HaMashiach, v'chitzu charboisam le'itim. It says this in the Navi in Yeshaya. So, and the Rambam paskins like the Chachamim. The Rambam in Hilchos Shabbos, Perek Yites, Halacha Aleph, he says beferish that a man is not allowed to walk around with a sword on Shabbos. It means that he holds that when Mashiach's going to come, the swords are going to be taken away. They're going to be used for agricultural purposes. Which means that the Rambam agrees that when Mashiach comes, there's going to be other nevuos that are going to be kipshuta, yashinui, and the chidush in minhagei shel olam, that the swords will be taken away. For the whole history, swords are being used for warfare. And when Mashiach comes, there's going to be this huge shinui. And the Rambam paskins like the Chachamim. So the Lechem Mishnah has these two questions. If the Rambam is paskining like Shmuel in Hilchos Malachim, that there's not going to be any shinui minhagei shel olam, and the only difference will be Shibud Malchis. So then, Frexach the Shaila, why in Hilchos Tshuva does he paskin like Rabbi Yechanan? That the Kol Neviim Le'nisnabu Ela L'Yomos HaMashiach. And why in Hilchos Shabbos does he paskin like the Chachamim, which is mashma that there's going to be this huge shinui of the chitzuch harboisam leitim, which is why a cherev is not allowed to be carried around by a man on Shabbos, because it's not a tachshit. To answer all these questions, there's one more diuk, which l'chayda, it's a very cluttered diuk, a cluttered shaila in the Rambam, that the Rambam himself wrote in the Yud Gimel Ikrim that there's going to be Tchiyas HaMeisim. And Tchiyas HaMeisim is the biggest shinui minhagei shalayla. So how could it be that the Rambam himself says that the Olam ki minhagei noyig if there's going to be an inyan of Tchiyas HaMeisim? So according to the Ramban, and according to those who hold with the Ramban, that Olam Haba, which is after Yemaisa Mashiach, refers to Tchiyas HaMeisim. So you could say that first will be Yemaisa Mashiach, and then will be Tchiyas HaMeisim. It's two separate things. But according to the Rambam Befedish holds that Tchiyas HaMeisim is not the ultimate. The ultimate is Olam Haba, which is Olam HaNeshamis. But Tchiyas HaMeisim, which is Neshamis Begufim, is going to be before Olam Haba, which means that Tchiyas HaMeisim will be the same time as Yemaisa Mashiach. So if the Rambam holds that Tchiyas HaMeisim will be Bisman Yemaisa Mashiach, means that there's going to be the biggest shinui minhagei shel olam according to the Rambam. So how could he say Olam k'minhagei noyeg and paskin like Shmuel? And the answer to this is that we must say that in the Rambam there are two inyonim and two zmanim, two tkufas. There's the first tkufa that relates to the coming of Mashiach himself. In regard with the coming of Mashiach himself, everything is going to be Olam k'minhagei noyeg. And then, after Mashiach comes and he accomplishes whatever he's supposed to do, then later on there's going to be another tkufa where all the nevuas of the Nevi'im are going to be Mekuyim. And the Rambam, Sayin Perek Yud Aleph and Sayin Perek Yud Beis, Perek Yud Aleph where he speaks about the details of Mashiach's coming and what he's going to accomplish. And in Perek Yud Beis where he speaks about the matzav of the world. It's all speaking about the first tkufa. It's all speaking about the way how all these relate to Mashiach's coming. And relating to Mashiach's coming, there's only going to be Olam kiminhagei noyeg, there's not going to be Oisei Sumayvsim. And we see this from the fact that the Rambam doesn't bring any raya in Perek Yud Beis about the Matzav Olam. He doesn't bring a raya that there's not going to be any Oisei Sumayvsim. He relies on what he said in Perek Yud Aleph, because Perek Yud Aleph and Perek Yud Beis are connected. That when the Chachamim, Rabbi Akiva, Vachaveira thought that Ben Kuziba was going to be Mashiach, they didn't ask him for any Oisu Maifes. Because that is the Gedder of Mashiach. The Gedder of Mashiach is that he doesn't need a Oisu Maifes. Because his point when he's coming is not to bring a Shinoi and a Chidush in Minhagei Shel Olam. His point is to bring Menuchas HaNefesh and Menuchas HaDas, and to take away Shibud Malchias, that Yidden should be able to serve Hashem properly, that we should be Chachamim G'daylim and Yidden Dvarim Stumim, and our whole occupation should be to serve the Eibishter and to learn Torah. That's what Mashiach is coming to accomplish, and for that we don't need any Shinu Minhagei Shel Olam. And the same thing is in Perek Yud Beis. And anything that relates to Mashiach's coming, for example, the Navi in Yeshaya, which the Rambam himself quotes, over there, V'garaz Even Keves, is connected with the pasuk, is in relation to the pasuk which says that V'yatza Chayter Migeza Yishai, Mashiach's coming. In regard with Mashiach's coming, it's going to be V'garaz Even Keves. And therefore the Rambam learns Pshat B'negeh to that Nevuah, that being that it's in connection with Mashiach's coming, it must be only a mashal. Because Mashiach's inyan is not to bring any Oisis Umayvsim. His inyan is not to make any differences in Minhagei Shel Olam. Masha'en came in regard with all the other nevuas, Vishbati Chayera Min Haaretz, and that Ilon Yisrael are going to have peiros, and that V'chitzu Charboisam Leitim the Gemara in Shabbos, the Mishnah in Shabbos, the sheet of the Chachamim, and the sheet of Rabbi Yochanan that Ein Bein Elam Hazel Leimaisa Mashiach, that Kol Neviim Leinisnabu Ela Leimaisa Mashiach. That the Nevi'im did say Nevuah for Yemaisa Mashiach. So all these things are talking about a later Tkufa. When then is going to be Tchiyas HaMeisim also. Then is going to be Tchiyas HaMeisim, and then is going to be all of the other Nevuahs that the Nevi'im were speaking about, and that all the Psukim were speaking about, and that the Maimorei Chazal are speaking about. The Rambam is maskim with them. But that's going to be a later Tkufa, after Mashiach establishes in the world that Yidden serve Hashem without any troubles and without any distractions. That's when all the other things are going to be mekuyam. However, the Rambam is not speaking about that in Hilchos Melachim. In his halacha, in his geder of Mashiach's coming, in his halachic understanding of what does it mean Mashiach's coming, he does not discuss about any of those things because they're not negeya to Mashiach's coming. For Mashiach's coming, we only need Shitas Shmuel. That the only difference between Olam Hazat and Mashiach will be that till now we had Shibud Malchias, and Mashiach's going to come, Shibud Malchias will be over. And this is the explanation of the Rambam, where he says that Olam Kimin Hagay Noyeg, and he means it Kipshutai Mamish, not just in Chutz La'aretz, and not as a and not as a mashal, and not as a mashal. The other nevuos are not a mashal, and so on. He agrees that v'chitzuchar b'isam le'itim, but he's not speaking about that in his halachas of melachim, and that's why he paskins clearly that olam kimin hagei noyeg.